Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Tony Fauci, Dr. Tony Fauci was on the BBC talking about vaccines and the time horizon he anticipates and then the distribution challenges that the vaccine will face.
The question is, once you have a safe and effective vaccine or more than one, how can you get it to the people who need it as quickly as possible? So the amount of doses that will be available in December will not certainly be enough to vaccinate everybody. You'll have to wait several months into 2021. But what will happen is that there has been a prioritization set so that individuals such as healthcare workers will very likely get first shot at it, as will then likely people who are in the category of being at an increased risk for complications.
Right, which is not inconsistent with what President Trump has said.
Right, it's the same
and,
playbook.
There's a couple of things. One is that it, according to President Trump, relies on military distribution, employing the military for the distribution, rank order prioritization, but then the general distribution as more doses of the vaccine were to come online. Secondly, it's a reminder that for all the criticism that he gets for the way that he addresses the prospect of controlling the pandemic as best we can, in part through a vaccine, in part through herd immunity, the combination of the two. That it's magic and go away, and this is anti-science, and that we're turning the corner, and this is just not what the public health professionals are telling us, the overheated cable news talk show hosts hyperventilating for dramatic effect. The guy who is saying that is the same guy who is being roundly, maybe not him specifically, but his administration being roundly praised for Operation Warp Speed and the government's involvement in expediting the development of a vaccine. So that on the one hand, you have a politician being optimistic and trying to allay people's fears, even though, frankly, he's being very realistic on his time horizon, similar to what is coming from canonized public health professionals like Tony Fauci. Even as the drug companies are a little bit more restrained, we'll know by the end of October whether or not we have something. Although the AstraZeneca trial across the pond with Oxford seems to be going even better.
And they said they'll have something before Christmas.
And so that's the same horizon that we're on here. But that guy who gets all the criticism for turning the corner, magically disappear, is the same guy behind Operation Warp Speed. Just remember that. Use it with your friends when they give you that canned line that they got from the DNC or whatever hack politician at the local level they listen to. For more on all things vaccine and COVID related, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, who's the Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation, author of books including Wiki at War and Private Sector Public Wars. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you.
So give us the military piece of this that's referenced in terms of the logistics and distribution, starting from the premise that we're more likely than not to have something by year's end. We may or may not, but we're more likely than not, according to seeming the indications from these people who know better than I. And then so, yes, there's a priority by category, frontline healthcare workers, the vulnerable, so forth. But the infrastructure that needs to be built for distribution that keeps being referred to generically.
Right. So this is a backbone of the distribution of the vaccine that most Americans will never see, and it's simply about a logistics problem. How do you get stuff from one place to another, and get stuff to the right people? And so they're going to interface. I mean, it's just a coordinator. Who actually wouldn't have to be a military person. The reason why they picked the military is because the military people that they picked are actually very, very good at this logistics. And it's not just that they understand how to get, a carton of ammunition to the front. They know how to, because a lot of military stuff actually moves through the civilian system, UPS, FedEx, and everything else, and, air, rail, and the rest. They know that system. And so it's simply about that they're on day one, as soon as they say start shipping the boxes, that they're getting them out to the people that will get them to the priority groups that need to do it. So it's just taking all the friction out of the system so they can get the stuff out the door as quickly as possible.
And with respect to vaccines, let's talk about China. There is increasing reporting about this CoronaVac made by Sinovac, otherwise known as Beijing Bioproducts, that costs, I guess, $300 at private hospitals in Beijing. The treatment still hasn't passed stage 3, final stage 3 clinical trials, but it's already being offered to the public on a first-come, first-served basis. And the Chinese are already promoting this as something they'll make available to the world, clearly as an effort for diplomacy and furtherance of Chinese expansionist ends. How should we in the West be viewing what China is doing vis-a-vis this vaccine they're marketing?
Well, I would listen to Joe Biden on this one, who said, look, I want transparency, which with all the Western vaccines you absolutely get. There's a protocol for the development of vaccines that's incredibly well established to make sure they're safe and efficacious. And the Western systems have checks and balances and transparency, and the Chinese don't. So if you want a vaccine that is both efficacious, which means it works, and is safe, which means it won't harm you, then you're going to want to go with the Western vaccines, which in many cases will likely actually be free. And I think one point that's really key is that we're already buying the vaccines. So it's not like, they're going to get approval and then they'll run off in manufacturing. All the likely candidates, they've literally been producing hundreds of millions of doses and then stockpiling them. So as soon as one gets approval, they can start to ship them. So it's not a question of, it's approval, now we'll go make them for you.
And back to China, do you think that they went to war with us without soldiers? And I say that because they have destroyed our economy, and it's not done yet because we still have another round of lockdowns here in Chicago. And they've dummied down our kids. So now their kids are even smarter so they can apply to universities. Is that a possibility?
Actually, look, China's goal is to win without fighting. When people say, I talk to this because my European friends all the time, we don't want to get involved in a dispute between China and the United States. So look, fundamentally, we believe in free markets, freely elected governments, and human rights. China doesn't believe in any of those things. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party sees those things as obstacles to expansion of their power and influence. So if we don't protect those things, they're going to be under threat and under attack. It's really kind of just that simple. And what China would prefer is they don't want to have World War III with the United States because they know that would be, disastrous for everybody. They want to create the conditions where everybody else just gives up and says, okay, you guys run the world, fine.
I wanted to get your reaction to some of the lockdown protests in Europe, most notably Rome over the last couple of days. Italy facing its worst recession post-World War II, and other countries that are moving in the direction of lockdown, particularly, same sort of dynamic state by state in this country, and Ireland as well, and people fed up with it. How destabilizing is that?
Yeah, first of all, this is a very dangerous message we're getting for people who just want to, whatever the administration is doing, they want to propose the opposite. And this notion that there's a simple answer because, these guys are just stupid, but there's just simple answers so that they think that locking down en masse are going to solve everything, when the science very clearly doesn't say that. And the reason why they're getting pushback in Europe is because people see the negative consequences of the lockdowns in terms of their economy, and their health, public health, and all other kinds of issues. And they also see that lockdowns don't necessarily, and universal use of masks don't necessarily, stop the spread of the virus. So what they're demanding is kind of responsible public health policies from their government. And it's crazy to see people here. Just a few weeks ago, the president's critics were saying, "Oh, look at Europe; they're doing so amazing. We're just awful." But the reality is Europe's doing terrible. And the last thing we should do is just kind of imitate them.
I wanted to get your reaction to something else, too. This has been sort of underreported, though it bubbled up to the surface over the weekend with a war of words between Emmanuel Macron and Erdogan of Turkey. And this was the murder of Samuel Paty, a 47-year-old middle school teacher in a Paris suburb.
Right.
He announced, just the backstory for people who don't know, He announced to his civics class, this teacher, early in October, he would show some of the caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad that the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo had published in 2015, and that students were free to opt out of viewing the images. Well, this was denounced on social media. It became sensationalized, and an 18-year-old Chechen refugee came to the middle school, bribed students to find out which teacher was Patty, followed hit the teacher as he left school, beat him, stabbed him to death, decapitated him, posted an image of the teacher's severed head on Twitter. The assailant, later confronted by police, he attacked them with a knife, was shot and killed. But what it says about the state of play in places like Paris, something that a appeaser like Macron, my characterization, doesn't like to admit, but that this is still a real issue, as is the response from the quarters who are supposed to be against fascism, just like we see here in this country, which is they are very tolerant of expressions of violence and furtherance of Islamism, as well as so many other ideologies of the left.
Well, I mean, I think it's an important reminder that these problems haven't gone away, and that's not what I think President Trump promised. His goal was take down the caliphate. This was a terrorist group that was the size of a country, that was attracting tens of thousands of foreign fighters from all over the world, that was really operationalizing a global transnational terrorist campaign. That was kind of stopped in its track, but the fervent believers in that, they have not gone into a night. And I think political radical violence is something that's endemic to a free world, because we create spaces and then people come in and do horrible, terrible things. We've always got to be prepared for that. Democracy comes with a price tag, and the price tag is you have to look after your society and protect the freedoms and public safety of people. I mean, we see that issue here in the United States. I mean, I think what went on in Paris is appalling, that kind of thing could happen. And then I turn around and I see what's going on in places like Portland and Seattle, where people's, they can't go out in the street at night because there are fires and rioting. And I don't think that's tolerable either. And you don't create, you create an environment for freedom by providing public safety. That's part of the package.
And the reaction to this, which is often the case, can't be, well, that means we don't show Charlie Hebdo cartoons in class,
right.
And we don't have a discussion about that. We don't have a discussion about people who think that violence is an okay way to extend their belief system and so forth. That's been the reaction, including in this country.
Yeah, and that's clearly, when you read the Constitution, you read the preamble, and it has a list of stuff there, you notice they're not prioritized by number. It doesn't say we will keep you free or safe, that we will allow you to prosper. It says we're going to do all those things, and good public policies provide for safety and liberty at the same time. That is the challenge. Macron has failed in France. Erdogan has utterly failed in Turkey. And, I think, ironically, in America, where there was most criticism after 9/11 on this, we've done a remarkably great job about protecting our freedoms and our prosperities. But when I look at, again, what I'm seeing like in places like Seattle and Portland and Chicago, I find that appalling. I mean, I find that a basic failure. I mean, so whether it's a transnational terrorist or a radical agenda that's, burning a courthouse, to me, if you don't deal with those things, that's how you end up with caliphates. That's how you find out with revolutions. That's how you find out with people who lose their liberty. So you got to take these things seriously.
He is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, VP of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Jim, thanks as always.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Rollins Jewelers family believes this November is the most important election in our nation's history. Of course, they're right. Rollins supports President Trump and all Americans in keeping America safe and great. I really love these guys. I wear my watch from Rollins Jewelers all the time. Rollins' new jewelry collections have arrived from their quality jewelry brands like Mikimoto, Simon G, Hearts on Fire, John Hardy, plus Swiss timepieces from Tag Heuer, and Shinola, the watch I love. Visit Rollins' beautiful 4,000 square foot showroom that for the first time is offering fine pre-owned Rolex watches. Yes, pre-owned Rolex. You can shop online at RollinsJewelers.com and see what sets them apart. And this is really important. You'll still get excellent personal service when shopping the website, all from a jeweler you can trust. Take it from me, Mike Gallagher. I'm a customer. Go to RollinsJewelers.com or call 847-918-7300. 847-918-7300. Join Rollins in supporting President Trump to keep America great. Rollins Jewelers, downtown Libertyville, a family-owned jeweler you can trust.
More than ever, the world needs leaders of character, strength, and compassion. At St. John's Northwestern Academies,